Maria Garrido, what a pleasure to
Hey,
have you back. I am so happy to have you. You are doing so many things, and I don't see you enough in real, but I get to see you, and the fun part is I feel I see you for real online, which is not something I would say with everybody. In your own words, who do you? ¿Quién es?
who am I?
Yeah.
That's a very existential question. Who am I? I am a hyperactive queenager. I'll call myself that. I like that term for middle-aged women these days, who is eager to, who has an insatiable curiosity, and who is eager to always be in a state of learning something new.
Well, that sounds very fit for you. You're also a mom of three, living in
Mhm.
Paris, multilingual, and the CMO of Deezer,
Yes.
um, which I must imagine is keeping the queenager agerless.
You know what? I think I'm one of the oldest, if not the oldest woman in the company, but mentally, I'm probably much springier than some of the kids running around this building.
Yeah.
It's definitely about staying culturally relevant, and I think in any industry you work in, when you're in marketing, I really believe you have to stay somewhat humble, because the user or the customer should be at the core of what it is that you're trying to achieve that eventually does deliver business results. And it's no different if you're working in a tech app music business versus selling toothpaste, as far as I'm
Mm.
concerned.
Right. So Deezer is a streaming platform for music based in France, a little bit the
That's right.
Florian of France, one of the big ones. And you want to stay relevant, you presumably have a worldwide reach. I mean, that I
Mhm.
don't know the whole details, but staying relevant with a large group of people. I mean, it's a vast group. You got the youngsters, the oldsters, the revolutionaries, the conservatives. I mean, of course, everybody. So how do you, Maria, articulate relevance? How do you get to find relevance? I mean, staying humble is part of it, but you still have to make some decisions. Which audience do you want to go after? How do you get in touch with them? How do you know that you at Deezer are going to be relevant for them?
So in this industry, in the digital streaming platform industry, the number one box you have to tick is that you're credible in music. Before we get to any functional or emotional connection you might have with your actual customer, it's like, do you really know music? And that occupies a lot of our team's time, at least from the marketing. The tech teams, that's not their area, but we, especially on social media, have to show that we're always in the know on what's happening in music, what's happening in culture, what latest artists, what are they up to, when their new albums coming out. Early access to things is always a special bonus for our customers. But if I don't know what's happening in music, I'm not credible as a tech app, because
Mm,
this is the space, this is the universe I play in. That's the first thing I think that you have to do. So it's always being on top of culture at every level. Today we were bantering with one of our competitors on Instagram, and we were using Gen Z language that most of my executive committee had no idea. She's like, what does this mean? I'm like, exactly, you're not the audience, right? The
mm,
people on our Instagram are younger people, so we have to speak in a language that's relevant to them.
mm.
So cultural relevance is super important. Music credibility is important. And then, like in many other industries, it's about what's in it for me as the customer. What do I get out of it?
Mm.
Is your product, is it easy to use? That's the functional aspect. And then emotionally, do I feel connected to a larger community of music fans? Do I get to see, do I get access to music on my favorite artist before anybody else does? Like, what is the bonus for me as a customer?
Mm.
And it's the same for us as it is for Spotify or Apple Music or anyone else who plays in this space. So I think that understanding the drivers of engagement from your customers, or how you're going to recruit new customers, are the same for all of us. You know music, you know me. You personalize the app. I get access to everything I want and need. It's easy to use, and it makes me feel cool and part of a big, music community.
All right. Well, just one piece of those which sort of deals with a few of them is, for example, I feel sometimes that the personalization is coming to Minter for some kind of variety based on my clicks and my appetite before.
Yeah.
There's always a risk, I feel, that the choice I'm given is relative to the margins of the company that's providing them to me. So, in other words, oh, well, they're liking that one because they're sponsored, or they're sending me this one because they make more money on it. And this happens in many industries.
Yeah.
To what extent, I mean, you guys are publicly traded. You're obviously, seeking to make money out of all this. To what extent are you able to keep pure to that desire of what is actually what Minter really ought to have?
Okay, so here's where some interesting habits about people's behavior comes into play. So most people will make the majority of their musical memory archive between the ages of 18 and 24, maybe
Mm.
even 16 to 24, right? If you think about what's on your playlist or your favorite tracks, there's a lot of music you listened to when you were young. That's
Pink
when
Floyd,
we
Grateful Dead.
use exactly. Yeah, that's when you use that moment to sort of express yourself and your coming of age. So a lot of discovery on music streaming platforms is driven by younger generations. It doesn't mean that someone like me or you isn't looking at new music on our apps, but most of the engine behind discovery of new music is happening with younger generations. And there, of course, the labels and the artists we work with, their interest is that these young people will get to see what they have to offer, right? So the algorithms in the products, depending on how much discovery you do, will do different things. We have a feature in the product called Flow, which is our most popular feature. I think it's like 38% of people use it on a daily basis. And that feature, basically, you go in and you say, I'm in the mood to go for a run, or I want relaxation music. And it will mix your favorite tracks with new songs in similar, let's call them musical universes that you might be interested in listening to. And for people like you and me, that's how we discover new music. And if you don't like it, you skip it. And the algorithm learns that you're actually not interested in that piece of music, that artist, that genre. And what we've done this year is you can actually move that spectrum. Like, I want to do more discovery and less of my favorites. I'm going to do, I don't want to listen to reggaeton. Like, I am not a big fan of reggaeton. Maybe because I understand what they're saying in Spanish, but I really am not a fan. So I can say, I don't want these genres. And today I'm in the mood for more discovery. So pitch me new
Hmm.
music and
Hmm.
don't just feed me my own stuff, which lets the customer a bit control,
Hmm.
in a way, the algorithm. And
Or at
that
least
is our most popular feature.
has a little bit of agency. Um, you mentioned 1624, 1824, and one of the observations I've had in my little anecdotal manner is how many of that ilk today, i.e., my kids, have dug into and really like the old farts
Yeah.
music. So
Yeah.
I'm going to put me in my categories. So I'm going to be talking about uh, Pink Floyd, Bob Dylan, Grateful Dead, or any of this old stuff, Led Zeppelin. And there's something about them, and I was wondering what sort of insights you might have as to
Sure.
what on earth is going on there.
Okay, there's a lot of interesting things happening there. So, a couple of interesting statistics for you. So, I think 80% of the people who listen to Bob Marley are under the age of 35, which means they weren't around when Bob Marley was a well-known artist. The movie Bohemian Rhapsody was an aha moment for a lot
Mhm.
of people in this industry because it made Queen discoverable and fresh and brand new to a new generation of users. If you and I were talking earlier, we collected music, we collected vinyls, we collected tapes, we collected CDs, and that's what you had at home. The fact that today the average teenager has 100 million tracks available to them at the touch of a finger on their mobile phone means that people like Elton John, Sting can come back and be rediscovered to a new generation of artists. So that's why you see things like Elton John doing duets with Dua Lipa, who's popular, as a pop singer in the kids realm. It is opening the spectrum that all music is accessible to everyone. So there's no reason why bands like the Grateful Dead can't be relevant to a new generation who doesn't have a dusty old vinyl at home.
Hmm. Well, in that usually kids tend to reject the parents,
Mhm.
oh, dad, dad music, dad jokes. It feels rather reassuring somehow that my taste in music is pleasing. And I would argue at some level, there seems to be a certain level of rejection of the contemporary music in favor of that. I mean, I don't know to what extent that's true, but my reading is there's a sense of it's more authentic back then. They actually were musicians, were not augmented by synthesizers and a million other things to make their voices sound as they are. Anyway, react.
I think that's more fluid. I think you're speaking from your generation, with all due respect,
Of
Minter.
course,
We all think our generation was the best one.
naturally.
Um, but I think it's much more fluid. I think the kids today have grown up in a world, and this has its good things and its massive bad things, of content overload. But if you think about, if I think about my youth, right? My parents were foreign, so that helped, but my friends didn't see movies in Korean, or do they listen to music in languages they don't speak, right? Today, my 17-year-old son will listen to rap in languages he doesn't speak. He'll go see movies in Japanese and Korean, in Turkish, and doesn't hesitate that that's a different language or a different culture. There's much more openness to all kinds of content that comes from different parts of the world. And that has translated into music too. And artists have caught on. You have a lot of artists who are mixing genres. You can find songs that have 5 different genres of music in one track, in one 3-minute track. And the kids are totally open to that way of working. So I don't think they're looking at the music. The Grateful Dead is like, oh, those guys actually really know how to play a guitar.
Well,
Versus
and
like,
by the way,
here's this stuff over
sometimes they
here.
didn't.
And so maybe sometimes they didn't, but you know, and this over here is all done by a synthesizer. It's much more fluid in their
Okay,
minds.
you're bringing up another pain point for me,
Mhm.
which is genres.
Yeah.
And I have this idea that I need to sort my music by genres. So if I'm in the mood
Ooh.
for reggae, I want reggae. And in the middle of reggae, I do not expect to have Izzy pop or something radically different happening. So I try to have these genres, but like you say, there are sometimes in one track 5 genres.
Yes. Yes.
Let's you can react to that, but I also wanted to get into Deezer and how it's fighting against the big, the Goliaths out there. What are the types of approaches? What if someone's listening to this and never heard of Deezer, which I'm going to guess is
Mhm.
for some of them,
It's yes, very likely.
right? Um, what would be the reasons why they should go and try Deezer? Give us some ideas why Deezer is an interesting new discoverable streaming app.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think let's go back to the origins of this industry, and then we'll get to the response to your question. So,
Sure.
um, the people who founded Spotify and Deezer and all of these music apps were pirates.
Hmm.
There were young guys who had an idea of democratizing access to music to the entire world, and they went out and they were faster than governments and faster than the music industry, and they basically gave access to all the music in the world to anybody who wanted it.
I remember
Um,
Napster.
Right, exactly. The Napsters of the world, right? And then what happened? That an industry that was highly profitable, you know, think about, like, it's like a bit like a VC model. You know, 30 years ago, a big music label would launch 10 artists. They invest in 10 artists. One of them would make it pretty big, and they would cover the cost of the other 9 they spent. Okay. Today, that's not very possible. In fact, because there's so much content out there, they have to launch 20 artists for one to do decently well. And who knows if they cover their costs? I don't have their numbers, but they were doing pretty well with CDs. DSPs came in, digital streaming platforms, and said, guess what? Music's free for everybody. It's a free for all. And their business went boom. And then they got their act together. They came back. They lobbied governments about rights, because it's true. Artists need to be paid. Producers, songwriters, composers, sound engineers need to be paid. And the pendulum swung in the other direction. So it made every DSP highly unprofitable, because of all the money that they generate in revenue. There's quite a big chunk of that that has to go to pay the rights of all of the music labels and all of the artists who are on the platform. That makes it difficult for these businesses to financially survive. So every single one of these companies, whether it be a Spotify, a Deezer, is in a course correction mode. Like, how do we optimize costs? How do we render the ROI as efficient as possible on our marketing spend, on our product development, on our technology innovations, in a way that we can make our business profitable? Because the way it's set up today, it no longer is. And they've created their own problem, because they commoditized the music industry, the music access of
Right.
customers, where we used to pay $14.99 to buy an album. Today you pay $12.99, $11.99, $10.99, or if you still have a student offer, even less than that, and you have 100 million tracks available to you on a daily basis. There isn't the
That's a monthly
appreciation.
fee. That's a monthly fee, the
It's a
subscription,
monthly fee.
and that gives you
Yes,
access to everything, whereas 14.99
everything.
before was one album.
One album. So the economic model just literally like was, it's not even disruption, it's a nuclear bomb
Mm,
in the industry. So a lot of artists are like, okay, well, how am I going to make a living now? Right? I used to sell albums. I do live events. Live events is a big generator of income for them. But the split now, their pie chart is like, I do merch, I do brand partnerships. They have to be much more polyvalent, you would say in
mm,
French, than
mm,
they used to be able to generate income for themselves at the level they did before.
mm. Well, I can understand that, and one of the, I mean, obviously, where I think the differences will lie will also be in the functionalities on the site. You know, like you talked about the flow,
Yes.
that seems like a really neat thing, which I'm looking forward to trying out. So you do many things, Maria, and I don't want to just talk about Deezer because I could and I would like to, but you also are a founder of the Terranum Wellness. So,
Yes.
I mean, I would imagine being CMO of Deezer is enough to occupy you 8 days a week, to quote another song. You're also the founder at Terranum. You are a non-exec. You're an advisor at Quilt AI.
Mhm.
So how do you actually manage your time? I mean, give us some insights as to how to deal with that and still be a ray, a ray of sunshine personality and so active.
Thank you, Mentor. I don't always manage it well. I'm gonna be really honest. I'm not superhuman. Um, I'm very efficient about my time. It's not always easy to prioritize. That's what makes it difficult, Mentor, I think. I sleep well at night. That's
Mm,
important. Like I
mm,
have to sleep. Uh, my business in Spain, Terranum Wellness, which is an 18th century manager that specializes in wellness retreats, is my weekend job.
mm.
I have a team that I trust that's doing a fantastic job there. In fact, our greatest pride and joy is in the 2 years we've been open, we've gotten nothing but 5-star reviews from the
Oh,
customers that we've had.
nice.
And that for me is super important. And that is a purpose project that is so deep in my heart that I believe wholeheartedly in what we're doing there.
Hmm.
But that's my weekend job. So Saturday mornings, and Sunday mornings, I, pay the bills and do the things and follow up on the things that my team in Spain needs. I have started to show up at my wellness business as a retreater myself because I
Ah,
need the break.
right. Message to everyone
Um,
else, by the way.
I mean, yes, I need the break. We all need to take breaks. Um, the board roles are, I think I'm so curious that sometimes it's to my detriment.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I'll chase that. And then next thing I know, like I have so many things on my plate, I don't know how to juggle it. So it's not an easy situation to find yourself in. But the board roles are interesting, especially at this point in my career, because I feel like I can contribute, but I also
Mhm.
learn from the people sitting around the table a lot. And that for me is necessary. It's like air. If I'm not learning, I'm not breathing.
Well, I do want to mention something that amongst the things that you've done that impressed me was your dancing on live, or at least or your LinkedIn dance that made
Yeah.
me shake off the dust and try to do the same thing. So you were the inspiration for that. And I think my reflection is two things that as to why you are able to do all this in the way you do it is that you are in touch with yourself in a way that you're comfortable enough to express yourself in a real way. So that takes out a whole bunch of fudge which is stuck in the mouth of people who are disconnected with who they are, wondering about, well, how should I say this to look better?
Yes, yes.
Kind of entropic energy. And the second thing I believe must be within this Terranum project, which I want you to explain. Because Terranum, the way you even spoke about it just now was light up face, light up energy. So when you are at least doing part of what all the activities professionally, such a fulfillment fulfilling, deeply connected purpose, it it seeps into or allows you, it creates the energy to allow you to deal with the other shit, including paying bills
True.
and things that happen, which life is full of.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was giving a talk last week to a bunch of young women, and I talked about the support structure you need to be resilient, the confidence you need to be resilient. And I redefined confidence for them. I said, confidence isn't about saying, I know how to do everything and I'm amazing at everything. It's also about knowing and accepting what you're weak at and not beating yourself up about it. Come on, like, let's just stop posturing. Everybody's not good at everything.
Hmm.
Like and I really believe, Minta, there's power in that vulnerability.
Hmm.
If I can sit with my team at Deezer and say, "Hey, guys, I really suck at this and I need your help," it already just establishes a layer of trust with my team that is just priceless and makes us contribute and work better together. My job isn't to know everything. My job is to know what I don't know, what I know, what I don't know, and where to go for help to fill in the gaps that I have.
Well, in this regard, Maria, you are absolutely leading because, I mean, Brené Brown, vulnerability, it's one thing to
Yes.
say it, read it, write about it, but it's a whole other thing to actually do it. And so doing it with your team is one thing. My question to you is, how does it go when you're talking upwards? Because if you lead down with your team and maybe even your colleagues, I can totally get, I mean, a little anecdote. I was having lunch with somebody and a young 30-year-old, and he started by talking about, I failed out of school. This is in Paris. I failed out of school. I was no good academically. Usually when you're talking to a prospect, that doesn't sound like a sales pitch.
Yeah.
You know, look at me, how vulnerable I am, how weak I was at studying. Now I want your job or this, this business. It wasn't a pitch, but it does speak to this idea of the challenge of presenting upwards or outwards vulnerability, a self-avowed weakness. Oh, what, you're no good at this? You don't know how to do this? How is that possible? If the bosses reprimand you that way. So you've talked about leading within. How do you lead with up?
That's a great question. And that isn't always easy, Mentor,
No.
but I have to take a deep breath when I go into those kinds of be like a couple of 10 minutes of deep breaths before I go in. And I've had to teach myself to not be the good student and respond, but to go, you know what? I don't have that information. I'll get back to you. You
Mhm.
know, because I know there's no way I can have every single figure in my head. I'd be making it up if I did that, you know? So I have to, it's like you're holding back a dam. It's not very easy to do.
Mhm.
Um, and I think experience, I think we put too much weight on these situations. You
Mhm.
know, they're individual situations. The sum of the parts has nothing to do with that individual situation. So I try to take a bit of distance from that moment of discomfort, where instead of becoming defensive, because that's so obvious. It's actually better for me to go, you know what, I actually don't know. But I know where to get the information and I'll get back to you, you know?
It strikes me on the first hand, you still must come with a repertoire that's positive in the eyes of the boss. And secondly, knowing just about how much of the dam bust you're going to cover with the, I don't know, and I'm going to get back to you, and then get back. And
Yeah.
then it establishes rapport. And the sooner you do that, I think, the better off you are. Because the more you don't do it, the higher the expectation is, the higher that sort of fakeness is happening. That's that pressure that you're putting on builds up.
I had a boss who would say something really simple. He's like, there's good news people and bad news people, and I only want good news people on my team. And what he meant is like, don't come in here. If there's a problem, identify the problem, but I'd actually rather you come in here and go, here's how I think we might be able to solve it. Even if you're wrong, you're always moving forward in a positive direction, you know, in a positive light and in a positive energy versus like just dwelling on, oh my God, we screwed up.
Hmm.
I really like that. There's good news people and bad news people.
Well, just going back, one of the things I tend to try to do when I'm working with customers and so on is to think about how to orientate the solutions that we're talking about. In other words, bringing purpose into the solution, having some sort of North Star that's ethical, within our ethical bounds. It's not being perfectly good. It's just about knowing what my ethical lines are and what are we trying to achieve here, and allowing that to guide me in the creation of solutions. And the more that's shared, that's better. Now let's talk about Terranum, because it
Yeah,
is,
well, you're right on it.
yeah, I mean, I'd like you to talk us through the
Yeah.
founding of Terranum Wellness, where it is, and how can people go, and why would they go, and how many types of possibilities are there?
Okay, so this is a deeply personal part of my life. But about 15 years ago, I started to go on wellness retreats for my own sanity. I'm a single mom with three boys. I left a very abusive relationship that has kept me busy in court for many, many years.
Mm,
I had a very demanding job, and I thought I was going to do everything and pull off everything. And I didn't have a nervous breakdown, but I came pretty close multiple times.
mm,
And my instinct wasn't, I'm not paying enough attention to my kids, to my employees, to my team, to my friends, to whatever, but I need to start paying a little bit of attention to myself.
mm,
So I booked on a whim once, I booked myself on a wellness retreat, and it gave me permission to pause, which I'm very bad at, Minter.
mm,
I've never been diagnosed as hyperactive. I don't know, maybe I am, but it's difficult for me to slow down in every aspect of my life because I have an endless to-do list that never, it just keeps going. Whatever I scratch off, new things get added below. So I started doing the retreats. I have always gone by myself. If I was on business trips in Singapore, I'd tack on a 4-day retreat in Indonesia for the weekend. Like anything I could figure out to give myself a bit of time to exist as a human being. Not as a mom, not as a boss, not as a friend, as a human, as a woman and a human being. And they were so beneficial to me over the years that I sort of started cherry picking what I liked about each one. And I thought, someday when I retire, I would love to build a business that does for other people what this has done for me. And I built the business plan, and I knew I wanted to do it in Galicia, in the northwest coast of Spain. My family is from there. I wanted to contribute to that community. And all the boxes, I had a lot of data available to me because I run the insights and analytics teams. So I was like, wow, the tourism numbers check out, the projections on Spain, the wellness business is exploding. I'm like, well, okay, rationally speaking, this actually makes sense. It's not just my passion project. I built a beautiful little plan, stuck it in a drawer, and said, when I retire someday from the rat race of the corporate world, I'll do this. And COVID hit, and the only trip I was taking was to see my elderly parents in this part of Spain.
Galicia.
So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna start familiarizing myself with the real estate. What's out here? I don't even know if what I'm looking for exists. Really casually. And I walked in to the fourth property I visited, and I was with my oldest son. And 10 minutes in, I went, oh shit, I have to do this now. And I always make this joke that I've never fallen in love with a man like I fell in love with that house. I mean, it was instant, Minter. Like I walked in, the property owns the mountain spring. There was the sound of like fresh running water, overlooking the ocean, surrounded by a eucalyptus forest. It just, the space you would walk in and you deep breath, and it gave me permission to pause. It was feeding my soul. And I said, this is it. I can't wait till I retire. So I purchased the property, hired some interior designers to come in and gut the place. And then we opened in the summer of 2022. And I don't come from the hospitality business. I don't know anything about the luxury hospitality business. And I don't know anything about running a hotel, Mentor. But I was so convinced of the purpose behind this project. And I hired only female entrepreneurs to help me. Female interior designers, female website designers, brand designers. The woman who helped me conceptualize the menu was a female founded business. Like I
You mean
made
the woman you, not the menu.
the no, the woman who helped me
No, no, no,
conceptualize
no.
the
I'm just
menu.
joking about
Oh, the woman
the
knew.
menu.
The menu. I've really focused on that. I said the day we turn a profit, I will give 10% of the profits to provide wellness retreats for women who are survivors of domestic violence for free. Everything is locally sourced. Like there were so many ESG elements that were important to me They were difficult to put in place, and I spent many, many hours in my room by myself behind my computer screen. You know, you go from a corporate world with a big team and social interaction into the entrepreneur world, which is very lonely at the beginning and along the way, very lonely. But we started the business, and so many of my theories have been debunked on what I thought I was building, but in such a fabulous way, Minter. I thought my client is going to be a middle-aged woman like me who's burning out and needs a break. And suddenly I see men showing up. And I'm like, what's going on here? More men, elderly people showing up. You know, 80-year-olds who are retired, who have the time and the dispensable income and have never done a yoga class, but they're super curious, you know. And we realized that, and I had big discussions. We hired a PR agency, lots of controversy. You need to hire supermodels to come in and be Instagram influencers. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing here. This is a place for anyone who's interested in wellness. It doesn't matter where they are in their journey. We are going to be accessible. We're not judgmental. If you don't want to get up and do yoga at 8:30, we don't care. Sleep in. And at the end of the day, what I see happening is people cry when they leave us on Sunday, because we have the kindest team of any retreat or wellness center in the world. They are here to pamper you, to not judge you, to let you do your journey. Everybody who's coming to retreats is not there as by accident. You know, the startup founders I have that show up from Boston and Tel Aviv, who've never shut their computer in 20 years, are not there by accident. The man who's been widowed after 40 years of marriage and hasn't left the house in 3 months, and his sister buys him a retreat to show up in our house, is not there by accident. So in essence, we are collectively hugging our clients. We are giving them a collective hug and allowing them just to be. And that, every time I see somebody leave crying, all of the headaches of spending my weekends paying bills and trying to figure out how I'm going to fund it, you know, how I'm going to fund it, and all of the work is absolutely 100% worth it.
So on the funding piece, have you completely kept it within your funding, or have you managed to get some, or do you want funding? Is that something you're looking for?
That I would like it because I'm impatient.
Hmm.
Because I would like to go faster. Right now, it's completely self-funded. So I manage everything on both on the, you know, on my side and living in Paris and the business in Spain. I am interested in angel investors for the simple sake of acceleration, because I would
I,
like us to go faster.
I want to get into the attitude of your employees,
Yes.
because most of my clients I work with struggle with engaged employees,
Mhm.
employees who are actually delivering the service, that aren't the founders are going to get the big paycheck at the end when everything's successful, that may not even have anything in terms of uh, relationship with the people who are coming. In terms, for example, the person who's coming is paying a large amount of money that they could never pay in their own way. How do you, so any other companies dealing with this, you know, take the luxury companies, Chanel or Louis Vuitton, whatever, the employees who are serving the clients are walking in the door to buy the 5,000 euro, whatever, way beyond the means. So there's no relationship in that sense.
Mhm.
And therefore disconnection with what they're doing can happen. How have you embarked these people on? How do you keep them motivated? I mean, presumably they feel like they're being hugged in some way as well. But I wonder from you, how have you managed to do that? Is it choice of people, the type of questions you're asking in order to get them to come on board, the care you give to them going on, the implication of your purpose? What is it that's keeping them in that state?
We call them the kindness tribe at Terranum. And we very early on, we noticed that a lot of guests were saying things like, I've come here as a guest and I leave as a friend, which was for us the ultimate compliment, right? So my hotel manager and his partner host the retreats. So they actually do all of the activities. It's as if you're in their home. They do all of the activities with our clients, and they foster the community aspect of what we're doing. The woman who cleans our property, who we call the shadow of perfection, because she doesn't like to be seen. There's two great blogs on our website that you should look at that are called the Kindness Tribe, and I highlight every single member of our team. She loves that. She was there when that house was a ruin before 15 years before I bought it. And she came with the deal. Like when I bought the property, I had to keep her on as an employee. She loves that property more than I will ever love that house, and takes care of it like it's her own child, and is a literally a shadow of perfection. She wants to make sure that everything is perfect in the room for our customer, because it's a reflection of her own talent and the skills that she brings to the team.
So she
Um,
owns it.
yeah, it's for her, it's hers, it's hers. To be honest, she knows where everything is way better than I do. Like if the electricity drops out, she knows where the fuse box is, she knows everything. We went through a couple chefs before we found one that had the attitude that we wanted to just embrace our clients and that kind vibe that we were looking for. All of the other people are people that come in from externally. Our masseuse is unbelievable. She's a body healer more than anything else. Yoga teachers, we've been through a few, I have to say, before we find one that knows how to handle somebody who knows how to do a downward dog or stand on their head, standing next to an 80-year-old who's never done a yoga class in their life. We need people who are open and embracing of different people, different backgrounds, different journeys. Some of them has been bumpy. We haven't hit it straight out of the gate. But we've slowly figured it out. We have a woman who does sound healing who's amazing and just gives off this unbelievable vibe. But it takes time to get there, and it's a bit of trial and error, Minter. It's a bit of
Sure.
trial and error, because sometimes you can go through the interview and it's great, and then when you've got the person on the property and we're rushing because we have a stack of journalists coming in for a PR event, and they start treating the rest of the staff poorly. That's where I draw the line. Like if
Yeah.
we're trying to do kindness, you can't treat each other like this.
I reflect on comment that John Vervaeke, I follow a lot. John Vervaeke is professor in Toronto, and writes just the crisis of meaning, the awakening. And he went on a tour with Jordan Peterson, the famed professor, psychologist from Canada as well. And one of the things he remarked in a podcast that he held with Peterson afterwards was, well, one of the things I really liked about you, Jordan, was that you treated the person who was sweeping the floor around us in the same way as you treated me or any of the other dignitaries that came around. And that kind of integrity of meaning, integrity of person is super important. That back to this idea of having this team. Of course, you're going to have difficulties finding that. Human beings are complex. I was wondering to what extent, Maria, you are actually involved in all the recruitments, and to what extent you feel the need or do share your deeper personal link and reason for founding this.
I approve all of the hires. I was heavily involved in the beginning of the team, but I do approve all of the hires. I Not everyone on my team knows my own personal story. I have to tell you the funny story. When I first bought the property, I sat down the woman who is our what we call in Spanish la ama de llaves, the keeper of the keys. And I explained the house is being used as a big, beautiful Airbnb for big Madrid families that come for the summer and rent it out as like a luxury property villa. And I said, we're going to do something different now here. And I remember, I will never forget the conversation. She looked at me like I was nuts. Like, who's this half Galician woman coming in here telling me we're going to serve gastronomic vegetarian food, that we're going to do wellness? All of the neighbors in the village were thrilled because wellness is quiet. So they were no longer going to have big parties. But she looked at me like I was nuts, and she said, what do you mean? But Spaniards aren't going to come? I'm like, well, it's not likely. It's probably, our guests will probably be British and Irish and Northern European because this wellness idea is much more advanced. And she was very upset. And I was just there 2 weeks ago, and she said, we had some Spanish guests, and she goes, oh God, please bring the foreigners back. I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, no, she's drinking the punch more than I drink the punch. And she puts every day when we have clients, the day they come in, we cut fresh wildflowers from our own gardens or from the woods, from the eucalyptus forest in the mountains. And she's in charge of making sure that everyone has their own unique bouquet in the room. Like she cares more about the ESG things than I do. which I appreciate, because then I give her space to tell my hotel manager, you know what? Like the compost bin needs to be bigger because we're not recycling and composting as much as we should. I give her every space to go tell my chef, you know what? Instead of buying the basil you bought today, there's some sitting in the herb garden. You can just pick it there. Little things like that. I give her space because I know that's the area where she's going to push my mission. My director is the guy that knows how to deliver service. And he's so obsessed with our 5-star rating on Google that like he's scared to death if somebody ever gives us 4. So I don't need to push him. That's what he created. He created that 5-star rating. I had a vision, but he implemented it. And those actual experiences of our guests are his responsibility and his talent and his contribution, not mine.
I have interesting parallel story in my mind. Like when you tell a story, how it pops stories in your mind. I had recently on my show a man called Vincent Klovenhofen, a Dutchman who went and fell in love with Africa and went and started creating safaris. Yes, it's about showing animals, but he decided to make them unique experiences. You can't really wave a wand and say, well, I want, the tiger to show up here. Of course, no tigers, but you know, the nature is what it is. So what you
Yeah.
can control and work on is that hospitality, the
Mhm.
experience within the camp. And I can say that he freaking created a 6-star with his because I experienced it at one of his camps in Zambia, which is called the Sausage Tree Lodge, which is just unbelievable. And one of
I've
the
been to Zambia, but I wasn't there.
Oh, well, this is where I really recommend you go. He adds one thing into the luxury thing, which I really appreciated, which is the notion of total surprise.
Oh, yes, yes, Minter, yes. There's always, yes, 100%, 100%. So as I was doing retreats around the world, like I started cherry picking what I liked about each one, but I said there has to be something they don't expect. And there is, and we're not going to talk about it here because I'm
Great.
not going to I'm
Love it.
not going to reveal it, but absolutely on Saturday night after dinner, we do it on Saturday night we do a celebratory dinner which celebrates the local culture. So they eat fish and seafood and wine from the region of Galicia. But at the end of the dinner, we make everybody get up and we take them away to something. And I won't say what
Excellent.
it is,
I
and
love
it
it.
is always the highlight of our retreat,
Yeah.
which is something they do not expect.
Yeah. And the fact is that, you have to they have to have a trust in you at that point. They've
Yeah.
gone on a certain journey already, and then they blithely follow you because you've led them along the garden path. And yeah, there's some tulips there, there's things here, and then oops, bingo. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's cute. Anyway, so how can people find more about Terranum?
So they can follow us on Instagram at Terranam Wellness. So Terranam is Terranam, which means terra, which is earth, and Anam is soul in Celtic.
Oh, I see.
So it's the link of earth and soul. We really believe in the power of nature to help heal people
Hmm.
in our business. So they can follow us on Instagram. They can go to our website at terranamwellness.com. We have retreats running most of the year. I don't know who thinks self-care is just a summer thing. You need to take care of yourself year round. We do next year, we're doing a lot more. We've realized there's a lot more interest in other kinds of retreats. So we now do men's only retreats. The first ones I sold out, Mentor.
Hmm.
Men's only retreats. We do menopause retreats. There's a lot of women who need to feel they're not alone in that process and get some basic tips on how they can help themselves. We're starting to do gastronomy retreats, which are not about doing yoga. It's just about eating in
Hmm.
Galicia. I don't know if
Hmm.
people outside of Spain know or not, but Galicia is known for its seafood and its wine. In
Hmm.
fact, I don't know if you know who Massimo Bottura is, the
Yes.
chef. I met him in New York a few months ago at an event, and he told me, Galicia, the best seafood in the world. I said, exactly. So we do a seafood tour. People get to go on a boat and look at the mussel barges in the ocean and eat all you can eat mussels. The village next door to us is known for its clams. So we go visit the people as they're clamming in the morning so they can explain what they do and they get to taste clams. We go on tapas tours of Santiago de Compostela. We take them very locally to something called a furancho, which are these homes up in the mountains that only the locals know about, where you walk in the secret door and it's all you can eat and all you can drink.
I love that.
So those are really popular. So we're doing more and more of those next year as well as the holistic wellness.
That's beautiful. Well, it's for sure Galicia is not the most well-known portion of Spain,
No, no.
but it does have a lot of wonderful properties. I've been there a few times. And I'm wondering, this is for Minter, it's just personal because, I'm always
Yes.
a little bit of a goot, is paddle, any paddle tennis courts in the neighborhood?
Oh, good question. No, we have a kayaking club because we're at the end of the Ocean Bay
Oh, I
and it
see.
starts to become a
Yeah,
river when you go just a little bit up the road. So we have a kayaking club, but as far as I know paddle is very popular in Spain, but
yeah, for
I'll look
sure.
around, Minter. I'll let you
Yeah.
know if there's any
Right.
paddle.
I always travel with my paddle racket. Just to finish off, Maria, so we mentioned at the beginning you have these other roles, NEDs, and you're an advisor at Quilt.
Yeah.
Your choice of Quilt was of intrigue to me. So just give us a little pitch on what is Quilt and why you join it.
Yeah, so I met them when I was working at Havas as the Chief Insights and Analytics Officer globally for the company. And I met Quilt very early on in their own story when I think there were 5 employees, the
Mm,
2 founders and 3 employees based out of Singapore. And we were interested in them because they were using artificial intelligence and machine learning to do market research. And market research reported into me at Havas. And what I found fascinating about their approach is they're a very human company. There's a lot of kindness at Quilt. They're very obsessed with doing a lot of projects for NGOs, for the World Health Organization, for UNESCO. So there was an aspect of like AI for good that I thought was quite interesting with them. And the scale of what I can do with them as a client uh, at speed was so different from the traditional market research models that
mm,
we use. And it is an industry that is absolutely ripe for disruption and has been for a long time.
mm,
So for over the years, I have very much stayed in contact with the Quilt team. I worked with them on several projects, advised them on a couple things. And now the company is half based out of the US and half based in Singapore. They're much bigger now,
mm,
working for big clients all over the world. They've worked for McDonald's, they've worked for Coca-Cola, they've worked for LVMH in France. They worked for Bell. They work a lot for Bell as well, the cheese company. So I have been on their advisory board, which is relatively new. We started a few months ago. So there's 4 or 5 of us, and we sort of help them build their models and look at new tools they can create. I've used them at Deezer on a couple of projects. We've done some very interesting work with them around fandom. And I
mm,
think it's always, we were talking about the humility of the marketer at the
mm,
beginning. We sometimes we make some very big assumptions of what we think motivates people
mm.
in their behaviors of media
Based
consumption
on
or
me, based on
based
me.
on me.
Yeah,
I know because I did it, but I'm not my average consumer.
yeah.
And we've done some really great work with them around fandom this year that has sort of broken the myths and the hypothesis that we all have around what we think, the reasons behind why people are part of a fan community. It's not what we think it is at all. And I love that about them. There's always a light bulb moment when I do some work with them.
Makes me think how in my group of people my age anyway, typically I feel that we're men in particular are less good at accepting their weaknesses, showing vulnerability, and having mentors, having somebody who they look up to and feel like can be a better person than them somehow. And yeah, and anyway, that was that thought. But does Quilt work? And this is maybe a personal interest with smaller companies as well. Is there a version that is useful for smaller entrepreneurs to work with
Yeah,
them?
of course. I mean, I think what they do so well is they can do market research at scale, but you can certainly bring it down to a local market. Like a couple weeks ago, I asked them, one of the other boards I sit on is a commercial real estate company, and they have an incubator where they look at new retail models, and they invest in retail models to spread them all over their shopping malls. And I asked the team, like, what kind of insights are you using to inform those decisions?
Hmm.
Right? So if they're only financial, you might be missing out on trends, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what's happened, but Krispy Kreme has showed up in France and they're accused a mile long to get a donut, right? So I said, how can you guys get on top of what's happening in France before it happens? So I asked Quill to do some very small amount of work for them on like understanding retail conversations and trends happening in France around fast food and quick service restaurants, QSRs in France so that they could have a more informed decision on what they look into next for incubation.
Insights and data, quilt.ai.
Yes.
Maria, how can anybody get in touch with you, follow what you do, write about, connect, or however, what links would you like people to run off to?
Well, LinkedIn is the
Aside
easiest
for
one.
Terranum Wellness.
Wellness. Yeah, you can find us on Terranum. The easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Just look my name up, you'll find me. And you can send me a message there. And then if it's related to Terranum, it's very easy. They can just write me at maria@terranum.com.
Beautiful. I'll put that into all the show notes. It's always
Oh,
a
great.
pleasure to get some energy from you. Thank you for coming on.
Happy anniversary, by the way, Minter. 14
Thank you.
years is an amazing, amazing achievement. Happy anniversary.
Keep on going.